Welcome to the Empowered Life podcast with Dustin Vaughn Warncke. Join Dustin as your guide to learning about unlocking your life's ultimate potential. Through inspiring conversations with special guests and proven wisdom, Dustin explores the interconnected values of personal growth, professional success, and a wholesome life filled with love and light. This show is based on tactical and practical concepts for life's greatest successes and achieving your goals, while also being full of inspiration to help you live your best life right now. Discover how to cultivate a mindset of empowerment, achieve success, and create a meaningful impact on the world around you, all while living with purpose, meaning, and significance. Dustin is a former associate publisher of Texas Fish and Game magazine, the author of over 10 books, owner of his own digital marketing agency, an outdoor TV show host, a video and podcast producer. And he will also become one of your best friends forever. Now, get ready to get inspired to live in gratitude. Here's your host, Dustin Vaughn Warncke.
Welcome back to our podcast. It's your buddy Dustin Vaughn Warncke. I'm so excited that you have taken the time to listen to our podcast. If you're still subscribed, I know, man, where you been? Where you been, Dustin? I know. It's been a while since I have recorded an episode. I apologize. I have been doing a lot of stuff in the background, lots of different projects going on that I'm directly involved in and some that I'm just behind the scenes on. But one of the main ones I wanted to, at least make you aware of is the launch of Empowered Life Nation. And so we have a Facebook group. You can find it just by typing in Empowered Life Nation. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And then if you go to empoweredlifenation.com, it's the brand that I finally launched. This is a whole bunch of different digital products that I have put together. Some of my very best stuff. I finally got off the ground. I've been trying to do this for years now. And there's an audio masterclass series. There's a guided sleep meditation. There is both of my books available as kind of upsells, downsells. It's a sales funnel. So basically you just go in there and choose what you want to buy. I don't expect you to get everything. One of the options is also a one-on-one kind of coaching session with me directly. And so that's all available again at empoweredlifenation.com. So I want to make sure that you are aware of that. If you want some of my best stuff, okay, it's available there, and you don't have to buy everything. Like I said, just whatever's going to fit your budget and fit your life goals right now is available on there. So I'm so excited. If you have stayed connected with me on this podcast, if you haven't, this is your first time listening to you. My name is Dustin Vaughn Warncke. I'm kind of your best friend forever on a podcast, right? I try to be as relational as I can. I am deeply spiritual, but I do not call myself religious because, again, you'll hear a lot of people say, the spirit of religion or the spirit of this or the spirit of that, and kind of like a dark forces or demonic realm. I'm not a spiritualist either. That's more of like the occult. I am a follower of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. That is the white light of God that never fails. That is where my focal point has been. And I want to explain before we go any further, the last 4 years of my life could probably be equated to something like you'd read about in the Bible in the book of Job. Lots of trials, lots of tribulations. And if you remember to the beginning of that book, Job kind of had it all. He had it all figured out, not all figured out, but had a lot of wealth, had land, had a lot of prosperity. And kind of the dark force talked to the white light of God and said, hey, they agreed to challenge his faith. So he had all kinds of trials and tribulations, but he kept his faith. That's the most important part of the story of Job, is he kept his faith through it all. And when I started going through all this, which started with a financial scam, and then ended up going through a divorce, and all kinds of other things just fell on top of me on top of that. It, resulted in PTSD. It resulted in, a lot of mental health issues that I've been struggling with. And it's one of those things that you either get bitter or you get better. And I come from a faith, that started when I was about 15 years old, going through confirmation in the Lutheran Church, the ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. And I had a vision, and I talk about this in my book, An Intentional Optimized Life, part of the Empowered Life Nation offering right now. You can get the digital version of that book, or you can go to dustinsbooks.com and get the paperback. I'm getting ready to re-release that book again, just with a couple of just little minor edits and stuff. But the book is one of my favorite books that I ever wrote. And one of the chapters of that book is I Had a Dream. And this isn't like Martin Luther King, I had a dream, but the whole idea was I had a dream back when I was 15 years old, and I experienced in this dream, I've never felt like this before. I had all kinds of questions, I had all kinds of wonderings and things going through my head of salvation, of, who Jesus was. Is all this stuff for real? And I tell this story in a couple of different interviews. I'm going to tell it here. Um, I get a vision of the Christ. Okay, I always say that a lot of us are little Christ. We are not the Christ, though. We are representations of the hands and feet of God, the hands and feet of Christ. I saw the Christ, and he was surrounded by all kinds of different animals, birds, deer. I love the outdoors. One of my other podcast is an outdoor podcast. And the words, as so many spiritually transformative experiences were delivered to me telepathically. Jesus never spoke them. I heard them through my soul. And the words were, I am neither ahead of you nor behind you. I woke up, I was a little confused, but I felt a feeling of peace like I've never felt before. There's nothing on this earth that can touch what I felt. I felt that experience later on in my life and a couple of other spiritually transformative experiences, a few of them actually. And some of them, I remember some of them, I just woke up with that feeling of peace. I knew I had had an encounter. And then I started, working within the near-death experience field, kind of listening to testimonials. I listened to thousands of testimonies about near-death experiences, thousands, okay? I worked directly with the Reverend Dr. Lee Whitting, who is a host of NDE Radio. It was, a show that it's kind of on repeat mode now. But Dr. Lee Whitting was a Army chaplain, I believe, a military chaplain of some kind. And so he kind of started a weekly, they called it radio, but it was more of a podcast even in the early days back in 2013. So I guess it went for over 10 years, close to 15, and basically talked about all the different things that were spiritually out of body, spiritual STEs, which is spiritually transformative experiences, and OBEs, out of body experiences, and NDEs, which is near death experiences, just so you understand that world. And those of us who have been there, who have had these experiences, most of us are pretty humble and grateful. We don't carry a lot of pride around. Now, there's some people that do a whole dog and pony show about their experience. But if you look at, me, I'm on an operating table in 2021 getting a defibrillator tested because I have a implanted defibrillator. I kind of have a knowing that it won't go off. Like that's not how this is going to play out, but I'm not 100, I just have a knowing of that. But either way, they were testing it, and they lost me. Okay, my heart stopped, and I came back after the third shock of the paddles. The image that I had was, now understand, a lot of near-death experiences are veiled, okay, which means that you cannot see beyond the veil. You probably heard that before. The veil was torn when Jesus resurrected from the dead. when Jesus was crucified, so on and so forth. The veil is kind of like the part you can't see. So I listened to another near death experiencer who was not made to remember. He saw six beings. I believe they were kind of ascended masters, six beings of light, as he explained them. And they said, if you remembered everything you saw, everything that we showed you, you wouldn't shut up about it. And I think that's probably what happened with me. I woke up with that same feeling of peace, though. I had an image in my mind of Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, on a bronze coin or a bronze plate. Looked ancient. And I think the interpretation of that, with the associate producer I worked with at NDE Radio when I was doing their tech support and their social media promotion, Lilia Somalia, great woman. She said, that is the endearing love that you have with Christ. And it was a beautiful experience, but I don't remember much of it. And I realized, just like this gentleman that had his experience, very extroverted like I am, you don't want to give people the wrong intention, because if you know everything on the other side and you tell everybody, a lot of people want to go there before it's their time. You know what I mean? The whole purpose of the Empowered Life Nation, the whole purpose of this podcast is to prevent people from going before their time and to live with the purpose, meaning, and significance that they were set here to do. All right. If you look at the depthness of all this, the depth of what it is to be a follower of Christ, I don't want to even identify with the religion of Christianity. Okay. There's so much going on with that churchianity. There's the prosperity gospel and the word of faith. There's charismatic Christianity, all kinds of different versions of that. All right. I'm just a follower of the one. All right. I'm just a follower of Jesus. And I refer to Jesus by his Hebrew name, Yeshua HaMashiach. It's very, it comes right off my tongue now that I've learned how to say it, because that's what he was called in Aramaic and Hebrew during his time. Jesus is the translation of Yeshua, okay? Yeshua translated into Greek is Jesus, and Hamashiach is translated as the Christ, okay? So it doesn't matter how you remember. Most of us just grew up knowing Jesus, 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 right? It's the name, okay? Jesus was a common name in Greek. Yeshua, which in English would directly translate into Joshua. Okay, there's a book of Joshua in the Bible, but that's in the Old Testament. Joshua, common name back then too. All right, so Yeshua, his name is the one that can put a hedge of protection over your life. And that's what I'm advocating for you. All right, hedge of protection over your family, hedge of protection over your workplace, your personal life, your professional life. Every part of your life be protected by the name of Christ. All right. And not so much motivational or woo-woo stuff or anything like that, but understand that spiritual warfare is a real thing. And there's one of the YouTube guys that I follow. I heard his story, probably 10 years ago. His name's John Ramirez. He was a satanic priest. He was going around and making soul contracts and all kinds of deals with the devil, had sold his soul to the devil. All kinds of just, evil things that he was just spewing out and just trying to curse these places and put curses on neighborhoods and communities and areas, and had, people, like, he had contracts with all kinds of people all over the United States and beyond. Even his territory where he grew up, Puerto Rico, that area, or that he was from. And he grew up, and his dad had died, and the devil pretty much became his dad. And he had a experience. I'll give you a summary of kind of a dream of going in a train with a bunch of people that had kind of disfigured faces. You couldn't really tell who they are, but they were concerned. And it was a train on the way to hell. And when he realized that that was where the train was stopping, it's a one-way trip, he repented and asked for Jesus to come into his life. And he made a 180 degrees turn. All right. Satanic priest to a follower of Yeshua. It's a big deal. And he talks about spiritual warfare a lot in his speeches and different things that he does. I think if you look at John Ramirez Ministries on YouTube, you'll see some of his stuff. But fascinating, because here's a man that did all this work for the first part of his life for evil forces, that knows all about curses, and he was raised by wizards and warlocks and witches and warlocks, like all kinds of evil forces. That's all he knew was darkness. And now he is a carrier of the light. He is a light worker. He is a spiritual man that follows Jesus, that talks about the occult and the things that we find in our culture, and some of the people that we love their music or we love their movie star stuff or whatever. They've got all kinds of occult, witchcraft, paganism, that kind of stuff in their life, and don't do anything about it. Again, there are a lot of, once I started watching his stuff, there's a lot of things that I have seen in performances and that kind of stuff of different big major name pop stars and, in music, and then movie stars and that kind of stuff. I don't consume their stuff anymore. I'm not going to let anything penetrate my hedge of protection but the white light of God, because the white light of God is inside my heart, and I believe that with conviction. And I want the same for everybody listening to this. I want you to be a sunshine sprinkler, okay? Sprinkle sunshine. Random acts of kindness. I've talked about this on this podcast in the past, okay? Loving your neighbor as yourself, okay? The greatest new commandment that Jesus gave in his time. Okay, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, right? That's from the 10 Commandments, number 1. And then the new commandment, the great commandment, as we call it sometimes in the walk of faith, is love your neighbor as yourself. Love. That's God's language. Okay, that's God's greatest power that we know as humans is love. God is literally made up of love. That's what Steve Gardapi said in his near-death experience. He's dead in the jungle of Vietnam, 2.5 hours. His buddy, also named Steve, is dragging him out. They're hiding him behind termite mounds and all kinds of different stuff, and having to defend themselves behind enemy lines before they finally get rescued. And then they took shots in the Huey when they were rescued. Almost shot the Huey down. Horribly, just bad situation. God wanted him to live. God sent him back after his near-death experience. And if God can redeem somebody like John Ramirez, who was a Satan worshiper, okay, if God can redeem Steve Gardapi, who had a chip on his shoulder, Vietnam veteran, a medaled Vietnam veteran, you have to look up his stuff. Again, he's an unsung hero. You have to look up what medals he got. Flying Crosses, Purple Heart, all kinds of different stuff. Does not speak of it today. He was just doing his job. The medals weren't important. That's a hero, okay? A hero does not have pride. Overt pride over what they did. They were just doing the right thing. All right. And you can argue about the Vietnam War. I have people, got almost 2 million views on that YouTube video, and I have people all the time that are saying, well, when he says bad guys, does God love war and all these other things? And again, you're missing the point. The point is God's grace came through in his life, and God's grace is going to come through in yours. The same power that rose Jesus from the dead, the resurrection power, is inside of you. And I am standing here after God. Like, I'm not recording this on video because I took my son out fishing this weekend, because we do outdoor stuff, me and him, all the time when I have him on the weekends. And somehow I got bit by an insect. That's the best I can tell. And it swole up the left part of my face from Monday, and today when I'm recording this, it's almost to the end of the week. In fact, it is the end of the week today. And, it's Friday, so I'm sitting there going, I have not been able to see out of my left eye until today. My whole face, this little sting or whatever happened was on my eyebrow, just above my eye. My whole left side of my face swelled up. A lot of people will say, well, you've been through a lot, Dustin. I back in 2024, I was hit from behind from the mid-size SUV, crashed into the back of my Chevy Silverado 1500 crew cab. Okay, 4 doors, good sized truck. So hard, it hit me probably 30 or 40 miles over what I was going, 55 miles an hour, middle lane. Just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. God was really sending me a wake up call, though. Hit me so hard that my front seat stuff went to the back seat, number one, and that everything in me just shook. It was like getting hit by a freight train, and it hit me with such force that it bent the axle and the frame of my pickup truck. And the guy, it was a hit and run. The guy ended up somehow driving away from that. His radiator was leaking all over the highway. It was crazy. But again, God has a plan. Even in the worst things that happen to us, the best things are still ahead. You'll look back at a situation like that and go, that was the worst thing that could have happened to me at the time. But then you say, that's the best thing that could have happened to me because this happened next. Never take your failures. Your failures are an event, not a person. Okay, they're not you. Never take the things that you have failed. If you've lost everything, okay, if you were like Job and faced trials like I have faced that have been extremely hard, even not being able to see this week out of one eye. I was a one-eyed webmaster for my clients. That's what I talk to everybody. That's what I told them. The one-eye webmaster. Doesn't matter. See, my faith is so strong that I feel like I'm unshakable and I'm fearless. And when you're fearless, you're limitless. Hear that. Okay? Hear that in your soul. Have the kind of faith that is unshakable and have that faith out of conviction. The best decisions we can make in our life is out of conviction. Okay? If you look back into the Bible, 11 disciples all went to death, except for the 12th disciple, which was John, the beloved, right? John the apostle. He was exiled to the island of Patmos. The 11 loved Jesus so much and saw his works and wonders, they would go to die. They would go to death as martyrs. Think about the fact that the influencers we have today, the pop stars. I asked my son Jackson, hey, what would you do? Like, would you die for any of those people you see on that screen? No. Maybe we die for each other. And I always say I take a bullet for a handful of people in my life, but again, die for the one that you believe so much with conviction that you went to death because of what you believed. That is conviction, okay? The best decisions of your life are not made out of, let them not be made out of negativity, not guilt, not fear, not shame, out of conviction, okay? Don't falter from being convicted in your beliefs. Don't falter from being convicted by your decisions, okay? Those are the best decisions you will make out of conviction, not out of any negative thing, not out of what people might think about you. And certainly, and I'm going to try not to go off into the deep end on this one, certainly not everything that is sold to us on TV, okay? We live in a culture of bread and circuses, right? Give them bread. Feed them bread and give them circuses. That's kind of the distraction tactics that are going on in our political atmosphere, in our entertainment atmosphere. We got a screen everywhere you look. You got a tablet, you got a phone, you've got a TV. All of it runs on streaming stuff. You got news networks that are 24/7. That happened right as I was graduating college, which is 25 plus years ago. We've got circuses, we've got distraction tactics that are being implemented on us by the people, that we don't even know have a lot of influence in this country, okay, of the United States or wherever you live, okay? Global elite, you want to call them conspiracy, just the conspiracy theorists will say, the Illuminati or Bohemian Grove or all these different, elite billionaires, okay, that kind of run a lot of the media networks and own a lot of the big corporate interest in these kind of things. Okay, pay attention. Pay attention to how much of a circus you're watching. And this originally came from, I forget who the emperor was, Roman emperor. That's why the Colosseums were built. The big Colosseum still stands in ruins in Italy. That Colosseum was the same Colosseum that Christians were fed to the lions, right? All kinds of different, events. Think about our sports events today. If you took somebody from the Roman Empire and put them in a football game stadium, stadium of the football game or a soccer game or, American football game, baseball, any kind of sporting event, it's similar to the way that people watched the Colosseum back then, okay? They'd sit in the arena of the Colosseum and be entertained. Be aware. The point of this podcast is to wake you up to what's really going on and to help you strengthen with resilience, with empowering resilience. Strengthen your life. Strengthen your spiritual walk. So that way you know with conviction that what you believe is true. I often use the phrase I heard from a pastor a long time ago: a faith that cannot be tested cannot be trusted. And even though I have had trials that are similar to the trials of Job over the last 4 years, I'm still here. I survived everything that was thrown at me, and I'm still here. And I'm here to help you make those good decisions and stand with conviction in the white light of God. However you see God, Yahweh, however you see the ultimate abundance of the divine, I'm here to help be your guide towards that. Being a hardened veteran of life myself, okay? Dealing with some things that most people, I would guess to say 99% of people wouldn't have made it through. My goal of this show is to prevent suicides, and to have to keep people away from drugs and other kind of evil things that are that can harm them, that break families apart, keep families together, at least keep that unit of a mother and a father. And sometimes it doesn't work out. I was trying to avoid divorce, and that's why I waited until I was 30 years old to have my son. My son's 16 now. And still ended up with a divorce. But, before that happened, my two cousins, who are kind of contemporary in age, one's younger and one's older, have both been through 3 marriages. Okay. Married, divorce, married, divorce, married, divorce. My parents, before I was 18 years old, had married, divorced, and remarried 3 times each. Was trying to break the generational cycle. And hard as I tried, it just didn't work out for a number of reasons. But it's okay. Life goes on. The sun comes out tomorrow, and if it doesn't, you're still in the arms of God. That's where faith comes in. That's where the rubber meets the road in faith. Not by your will, but by God's will. And when you can learn to trust every area of your life to the divine white light of God that never fails, great things start to happen. When you start to say affirmations like I've got in my my little digital offering on empoweredlifenation.com, you start to realize those empowering statements, the things that you thought that whatever happened to you, it could be horrible, and I've had some horrible things happen to me. But at the same time, I'm still standing because my faith did not falter. I was misdirected. I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, but I'm still here talking to you. I'm still in front of this microphone, and I'm not on video right now because I'm not really pretty to look at with the left side of my face still kind of swollen. But I can open my eye today. You've got to celebrate the little wins, okay? You've got to be grateful for something. That gratitude and humility are the ones that lead the race. Pride always cometh before the fall. Says that in Proverbs. Solomon wrote Proverbs. Go back in the Bible and find a perfect person, especially in the Old Testament. Okay, Solomon was the son of King David and Bathsheba. Okay, if you go back to understanding the narrative of that, that was an affair that King David had with a woman that he liked, Bathsheba, and he sent off her husband Uriah to war to die. Front lines of the war, knew he'd be killed, so he could have his little affair. All right. And then billions of people know what happened with King David, knew that he had the affair because Solomon was the next king that came out of that affair. You never know. Make good choices. Distractions are among us on every screen. We've got a circus everywhere. All right. Don't believe everything that you hear or see online. Believe in truth and follow the white light of God that is inside of you. Have a moral compass. I'll tell you the difference between a good man and a nice man, or a good woman and a nice woman. All right. Good people stand with conviction of what they believe to be the truth. They are the shepherds. They're the sheepdogs. Okay. Nice people just go with the flow. You know who else goes with the flow? A bunch of dead fish. After they spawn, see them swim upstream, they spawn and they die and they go downstream. Okay. That's dead fish. Okay. I'm not into dead fish. I'm into living the white light of God and the destiny that God has planned for me. And I want to say something else. I'm a protagonist personality mixed with a Sigma male personality. So if you look up a Sigma male, we're kind of to the right, due right of an alpha male, but we're not alpha characteristics. Where a lot of Sigmas are introverts. I'm more of an extrovert, but Sigmas usually had a challenging childhood, which I did. I explained that. My parents divorced when I was 5. But Sigmas also have their own moral compass. They're lone wolves. That's another way of calling a Sigma male. And I'm a hybrid between that and my, 16 personalities, Myers-Briggs protagonist, turbulent protagonist. I want change. That's the reason why I'm leading this whole movement and this whole brand of the Empowered Life Nation on Facebook and through the website, because the whole thing is that to build a community of people who can be empowered by their faith, be empowered with conviction of what they know to be true, and follow the white light of God and that is inside them. Let that be the compass, not the dark forces that are all over our world trying to distract us from the light. Okay? I'm a living testimony of going through hardships and emerging a victor. And it's just beginning. New chapter of my life is just beginning, and I'm excited. You're never starting over. You're just starting from experience. You're doing a little bit of a restart, but you're never starting over after you have experience. Don't ever think, even if everything in your life has become ashes, that God can't give you beauty for those ashes. I'm giving you hope, but that hope is based on truth, and I am a living testimony of that truth. I am because of the great I am. And the things that are going on, I'll give you an example of some distraction things, is charismatic. And like I've talked about before, the prosperity gospel, the word of faith, and the charismatic Christianity movement. All right. We're talking about televangelists, which this goes all the way back to, Jimmy Swagger, Jerry Falwell, all these people. Today we have a whole bunch of other people that are giving us this whole idea that if you send $1,000 to this ministry, you've seen all this. I know you have. Send $1,000 to this ministry. God's going to bless your life with prosperity, right? Doesn't work that way. Does not work. That God is not transactional. And whether I call myself a Christian and identify with those people, which give Christianity a very bad name, I'd rather just call myself a disciple of Yeshua. All right? Because it doesn't work that way. God is relational. Relationships are more important than transactions. Transactions are of the world. Look at Jesus talking about transactions in the Bible. He's overthrowing money changer tables in the temple. You're turning my father's house into a den of thieves. Again, it is a relationship that is far more important than any religion. The relationship you have with God. And for me, the relationship that I have with Yeshua. And, I'm not afraid to admit that I used to be kind of shy about my Christian beliefs because Christianity has never been popular. It's never been something that somebody, Jesus will never be popular because, and that's the thing, it will never be a popular thing to be a Christian or a follower of Yeshua because it's been persecuted throughout the ages. Christianity has, because sensationalism and all that we see that glitters that we think is gold looks better than carrying the cross of Christ every day. It's true. It's the truth. All right. Christianity may be, the leading, like as far as Catholicism, they say there are over 1 billion or so Catholics out of the 8 billion people that are, 7 or 8 billion people that are estimated on this earth right now. But still, okay, are they practicing Catholics? Okay, is a Jewish person a practicing Jew or an ethnic Jew? My stepdad, Michael, is 99% Jewish heritage, but he practices as a Christian. He's 1% Cyprus, believe it or not. So that's kind of an island out there in the Middle East. Yeah, if you haven't heard of Cyprus, you can look up it on the map. But I don't know where the 1% comes from. But he's 99% Jew. My son is 6%, I believe, or 5%. I don't remember what the ancestry thing said, the data said, but Anasazi Jewish. Okay, Jewish is a heritage, but also a religion. And so again, it's just like, are you a practicing Jew? That would mean if you're a Jewish person who is, somebody who practices Judaism, or are you of heritage of Jewish descent? And and then again, what do you want to be true in your future? What do you want to be true in your life? What are you standing on as a good person? And are you stopping being just a nice person? That doesn't, and Jesus was a good example. He was a good person, not a nice person, especially not to the Pharisees and the Sadducees that would come and question his authority, right? And Jesus was great because he'd always ask questions with a question, right? He'd always say, well, who do you say that I am? I am that I am. And again, he'd always answer a question with another question. He challenged the authority of the time. He challenged the Roman Empire. He challenged the Jewish high priests and the Pharisees. And of course they wanted to get rid of him. Because he was a pattern interrupt. He was getting in the way. He was annoying to them. All right. And then they I think in one version of a movie I saw, the whole idea was that he could put them, they're convincing Pontius Pilate, that he's going to cause havoc. He's going to wreak havoc. And how would that look in front of the emperor, if the governor doesn't control this? And I don't know exactly how all that happened. The Bible tells us some stuff. But either way, Jesus was a huge interrupter of the tradition. Okay. And that's where religion gets complicated and relationship gets more important. Religion is kind of controlling what you do. You go to church every and it's just like, no, again, just because you sit into a garage, you do not become a car. Just because you sit in a pew on Sundays does not mean that you're a true follower of Yeshua. So that's my question for you. What are you standing for? Jesus was a good person, not a nice person. He wasn't nice to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, but he practiced loving kindness to those he was there to help. And people travel for miles to be healed because this man worked miracles. And in my belief was the Messiah that the Jews were looking for. And he was persecuted and executed for heretical reasons, which was a very severe persecution for somebody of that crime, of being a heretic or being blasphemous. Okay. Crucifixion was like, that was really uncommon at the time. And again, the lamb that was slain. All right. The lion and the lamb. Keep in mind that you don't have to be a nice person to be a good person. And again, a good person stands with faith and conviction based on truth, what they believe to be true. Be a good person. Okay. Don't just go with the flow like the dead fish. Okay. Be a good person. Stand for the weak and the vulnerable. Bless other people in your life with loving kindness, Christ kindness. Be a little Christ to somebody in your life that needs help. There's all kinds of volunteer opportunities. I want you to consider your own personal ministry. What do you give to? For me, it's been feeding ministries for a lot of my life. It's been ministries like Crosswater Outfitters I talk about a lot that minister to soldiers and minister to, kind of neighbors and friends of the guys that are in the ministry. Our outreach is helping people become, become disciples, become part of God's holy will for their lives and equipping them with that. Just like we equip everybody for a fishing trip, we equip them to carry the cross of Christ. It's not easy. Nobody ever said any of this was going to be easy. I for sure can tell you that life is difficult, okay, with all that I've endured, even this week with my, my infection on right above my eye. They were worried about, my eye having issues, but as far as from this infection being right at my eyebrow, but the antibiotics are taking care of it, and thank God for that. All right, there's always something to be humble and grateful for. What I don't want is for you to believe all this word of faith stuff that, it's a transactional relationship. No, you need a relationship with the divine. Okay. Don't get lost in all this other stuff of false prophets. There's a whole bunch of those. There's a lot of news going around about false prophets being exposed. Mike Winger's one of my favorite YouTubers I've been listening to lately about exposing those false prophets and the fact that some of these people that call them modern day prophets call themselves that aren't really worth their salt. They're getting the information from Facebook accounts. They're getting their information from the internet somewhere. They're getting fed the information to basically prove that they're a prophet. That's not real. I want real. Don't you want real? I want authentic. I want a genuine person to deal with and to take my information from. That's why when it comes to politics and news and world result, the world culture and things that are going on around the world, I don't watch the news. I'll watch an independent journalist on a platform like YouTube that gives me an unbiased look at what's going on. And then that's it. Like I'll make my own opinion in about a minute and a half watching the news or reading the news on an unbiased website, right? An unbiased blog. It's the way a lot of us get our written news these days instead of newspapers. My parents still get the newspaper, but that's okay. But like I say, I can find the news in about a minute and a half. I don't need to sit there and watch an hour because that's what's happening. Our country is being psychologically divided more than it ever has. This is something the good man in me is standing up for. Okay. Don't be distracted by those circuses. And I'm telling you why. All it's doing, and there's a guy I want you to check out on YouTube as well called Chase Hughes. Chase Hughes has trained CIA and FBI operatives. He's a very smart person. And he talks a lot about things like mass amnesia, the glitch, all kinds of different things of psychops that are going on in our culture right now. Charlie Kirk's assassination's one of those. All of a sudden, you have people that are on one side saying, it's their fault, and the other side saying it's their fault. And it's just dividing our nation here in America more than ever. It's that way all over the world, too. It looks like the world's on fire if you watch the news. And the whole idea is that you show up at 5 o'clock the next day for more bread and circuses, for more news. And if it bleeds, it leads. Keep that in mind. If it bleeds, it leads. I was an editorial guy for a long time, contributing editor. I didn't do, I did outdoor stuff, but the whole idea is that, look at the cover of a magazine. You got a functional savior there. Okay. Oh, I want to be like that person. I want to have that experience. I want to catch that fish, right? That's a functional savior. All right. That's to get you to pick up the magazine and read it if you're not getting it at your house, in the mail. Even if you are getting it in the mail, it makes you want to crack the cover and look at it, right? See what's inside the magazine that has this beautiful picture of this giant redfish, all right? That's just one example. But keep in mind, 24-hour news, whether you listen to, your network of choice, just about every one of them has a bias that's on mainstream media right now. towards left, right, and that's not the point. The point is right versus wrong. For me, it's a moral compass decision. And you have more in common with your neighbor across the street who may believe politically different than you do with somebody who, is just kind of, on some talking head on the news channel, okay, on the 24-hour action news channel, all right? You have more in common with your neighbor, and you might need your help with your neighbor. If we go through some kind of social unrest, okay, in the future, I hope we don't, but the world seems to be on fire every time you turn on the TV or go on Twitter. It's everything that is sold to us, and not everything that's sold to us is real. Not everything is sold to us. I mean, we see the worst case scenarios, so we come back and look at the worst case scenarios. I'll give you a good example of that. Look at 600-pound life, 1,000-pound sisters. Okay, those are extreme examples of morbidly obese people just paraded on TV, so we could all sit there and comment on it. It's disgusting for me. I don't watch stuff like that. Why? Why do we take somebody like I won't mention her name, but there's a younger gal that is on a major network who has extreme case of Tourette's. Okay, is that about Tourette's awareness, which she says that it is, or is that about an extreme case of Tourette's that is just paraded around for all of us to see? Pay attention. Okay, we all have our guilty pleasures and TV shows we like to watch, and I get that. But keep in mind what's really going on here. Be aware, be awakened, and be enlightened. That's the whole purpose of this podcast and the Empowered Life Nation movement, is that you focus and anchor your life in truth, and the truth of the white light of God that never fails. That's what I want for you. Hey, it's been a while, so I know that that I have not been in front of a microphone doing this podcast that long, or for a while, for months. But I want you to hear that I'm back, better than ever. All right. I carry no pride in me. I carry pride in my work and the things that I stand for with conviction. But as far as like Dustin being the, this huge, star celebrity or whatever, I don't want that. I want to connect with the right people. That's what I pray to God for. Put me in front of the right people, the right listening ears, you guys, okay? You listening to this, okay? You're the ears that I want to impact, okay? I want to be a beacon of light and hope for you as we walk through life together. I want you to learn from my hardships and how I overcame them with extreme faith, all right? If I did not have extreme faith that started back when I saw Christ back when I was 15 years old, I wouldn't have made it. I would have given up. I have chronic health conditions, guys. I have, all kinds of stuff that should have killed me by now. And here I am in front of this microphone talking to you by the grace and mercy of God. And I can't define mercy, but I can understand grace. And the love of God never fails. You have to trust with everything. I'm telling you, we're going to be talking about this a lot more in future episodes. You have to trust God with it all. Every area of your life. No skeletons in any closets. No. I have been spiritually transformed by my hardships, and I want to share that journey with you through the process of the future episodes of this show, so you can become enlightened to the truth of reality, of everything that we experience in human consciousness, okay? I want you to live the best life you can without having to read a book about your best life. You know what I'm saying? Don't believe all the stuff about religion and send money here and mega churches and all this other stuff, okay? Don't, again, pay attention and be aware of what you're consuming. What you put into your mind is ultimately what you become. Your thoughts become things. They manifest that way. Be careful, okay? Stay positive. Stay in the white light of God. Stay on a mission. In fact, for your own personal ministry, here is my challenge for you. Come up with your own mission, vision, and value statement of your personal ministry. You don't have to start some movement that, gets all kinds of, press and everything like that and have a whole bunch of followers and all that kind of stuff. Your personal ministry, the things you support with your time, talent, and treasure. Okay. I'm trying to lead you to seeing that being part of something bigger than yourself is where the gravy is. That's where the secret sauce is. Okay. Being part of a change, being the change that you want to see in the world by doing your part to be part of that change. Something bigger than you. Write your vision, value, and mission statement of what your mission is in your personal ministry. All right. It could be giving money. It could be spending time doing a weekend event like I do every once in a while with Crosswaters. Anything like that, right? Inspire your life to become everything that God has for you. Open the doors, okay? Open the doors to opportunity. Don't just binge watch Netflix or go binge buy on Amazon. Go do something good for somebody else. We are so self-centered in this culture. Love one another. That's Jesus' great commandment. Love one another. And don't get lost in the distractions of all the screens we have. Mobile phones, everybody's on their phone all the time. TV screens, the news, what you watch. Be careful what you put in your brain and what you see with your eyes. I'm telling you, it's important. When you guard yourself from the things that are negative, the things that create negative energy in the world, you begin to see life a lot differently. And it's a beautiful thing when you do. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, reading, and listening. I'll wrap it up here. Remember, check out empoweredlifenation.com. I've got some cool digital offerings on there. They don't cost anything to ship because they're all digital. You can download them, put them on your phone, read the book on your iPad, whatever you want to do. I've got both Empowering Resilience and, which is the last book that I published officially for myself. I've published some other authors as well. I've got a link tree at dustinsprojects.com. That will have the Facebook group on it. That'll have my books on Amazon, everything like that. If you want to buy a hard copy or Kindle version or whatever of any of my books. And businesswithdustin.com, which is my, marketing and webmaster. Like I said, I was a one-eye webmaster this week. So thank you guys so much for staying a part of this. And please tell a friend, okay? If you have somebody that you think would be inspired by this show or, make better choices for themselves or whatever, I encourage you. I'm not going to put anything out there that's woo-woo or crazy or whatever, okay? I study metaphysics. I study the multiverse. I study all kinds of quantum mechanics and quantum physics around the cosmos, the macros of life, of our universe. That's the stuff that really interests me from that level and that scope of what God really is. And again, if God lives in the universe and lives outside of the universe, how do you define the outside of the universe? What's beyond that? Deep questions. Okay. So you'll be around with some deep thinking, especially if you get my books. And again, I ask those deep questions, those introspective questions that we all need to ask ourselves to have a meaningful and significant life. Thank you guys so much. God bless you. And we will, God maximize you. I'm starting to say that. God maximize you in the future and make every day count. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to The Empowered Life with Dustin Vaughn Warncke. To learn more about Dustin, please visit his creator hub at dustinsprojects.com. Warncke Enterprises, Dustin's very own digital services company, can be found at businesswithdustin.com, and his books are available at either website or at dustinsbooks.com. Please subscribe to the Empowered Life podcast on your favorite podcast app, and thank you for your support and sharing this show with a friend.